Believe it or not, a 15-year-old can be very manipulative. She knew she could get those two idiots to take care of her problem. That was one viewer's comment, and honestly, it cuts close to the bone. Because this isn't just a case of young love gone wrong. It's a story where a teenage girl may have orchestrated the death of her own father. One message, one moment, one swing at a time. Was she a terrified daughter running from abuse? Or a cold mind wrapped in a child's voice? She didn't just lie, she led them, and someone ended up dead. In October 2017, in the quiet town of Medford, Oregon, a 15-year-old girl named Ellie Frier vanished alongside her father, Aaron. Hours later, the house was drenched in blood. Aaron was gone. Ellie was gone. And the only witness left behind was her little sister. But this wasn't just a missing persons call. This wasn't even just a murder. It was the beginning of a terrifying unraveling, because when Ellie was found, walking casually down the street with her 19-year-old boyfriend, what followed shattered everything. Accusations of sexual abuse, a bludgeoning with a baseball bat, secret handwritten murder plans, and a mother who, instead of grieving, simply said, "Why didn't you call me so I could get her a lawyer?" So, was Ellie a scared child escaping a monster, or a manipulator who orchestrated her father's death and used others to carry it out? In this video, Cold Radio will uncover the top 5 most disturbing, puzzling, and deeply haunting mysteries of the Ellie Frier case. Mysteries that leave even seasoned investigators stunned. We'll examine why the crime scene seemed almost staged, yet soaked in intent. The bizarre, unsettling behavior Ellie displayed during the police interview, whether her claims of abuse were rooted in truth or cold strategy, how her text messages read more like blueprints for murder than cries for help, and why her mother's emotionless reaction has become one of the most debated moments in the case. This isn't just another case of teen rebellion turned violent. This is a story where every thread, every smile, every text, every tear seems to serve a deeper motive, where the line between victim and villain blurs, and where the scariest part isn't just the murder, it's the manipulation. Cold Radio won't stop at the surface. We'll explore every contradiction, every psychological clue, and every piece of testimony, breaking apart the narrative to examine what really happened and what still doesn't make sense. Because the first mystery? It began not with a scream, but with silence. Why did Ellie's little sister wake up in the middle of the night to the sound of glass breaking, and then silence? Let's begin there. Top 1. The first mysterious and strange thing. The first strange and haunting detail in the Ellie Frier case begins not with what was found, but with what wasn't. When officers arrived at the home on Benson Street in Medford, Oregon, they expected a routine welfare check. What they walked into was something much darker. A living room soaked in blood. Blood spattered the walls, trailed across the floors, and smeared its way out the back toward the carport. There had been a violent, frenzied struggle. Someone had been hurt, possibly killed, and yet no body, no Ellie, no Aaron, and the car gone. In that moment, law enforcement faced a disturbing forensic paradox. A crime scene drenched in evidence but absent of its most essential elements: victim, murder weapon, and motive. The phrase police used still echoes with unease: a no-body homicide. And in this case, that phrase carried literal and symbolic weight. Because even after hours of searching, after combing the property and finding phones, broken glass, and a trail of blood soaked deep into the carpet, there was no sign of the people it all pointed to. And this brings us to the first mystery. How could such a violent and bloody scene exist without anyone there? No screams reported, no 911 call from inside, just a young girl, Sierra, waking up to strange sounds, hiding beneath her blanket, too afraid to look. From an investigative standpoint, this crime scene defied the usual forensic logic. The volume of blood suggested a fatal assault. The patterns showed dragging, movement of a body, not panic, yet the house remained intact. No sign of forced entry, no broken locks. It was as if someone had walked in, committed a murder, and walked out, cleanly, methodically. And here's the strange twist. The family car, caught on a neighbor's camera, driving away around 5:30 a.m. Driven by whom? Where were they going? And why would anyone take the car, bloodied as it was, and leave behind the phones of the missing? That image, a vehicle quietly pulling away from a house soaked in blood, is the first rupture in reality that left even veteran officers shaken. This single moment raises several chilling questions. Was this a planned extraction? A cover-up in progress? Or something even more sinister, something that had already been rehearsed? Sierra, only 11 years old at the time, later described hearing the sound of dragging. She said she heard her father yell something in anger, then silence, then footsteps outside. But here's where things get deeply unsettling. After the chaos, there was calm. Ellie was missing, but there were no signs of a break-in. Aaron's phone was left behind, untouched. The only thing that seemed to vanish was Aaron himself. It makes us wonder, did someone clean up after themselves? Or did Ellie, her boyfriend Gavin, and their friend Russell stage this entire event to look like a disappearance before anyone would suspect a murder? And then there's the question that tore through the YouTube comments and stuck in the minds of thousands. If this was a case of self-defense or abuse turned retaliation, why the secrecy? Why the calculated silence? This wasn't just a crime scene. It was a void. And in that void, the investigators weren't the only ones searching for truth. Viewers questioned everything. Was Ellie running from danger or running a plan? Audience reactions were visceral. She knew she could get those two idiots to take care of her problem, one viewer wrote. Another called it a carefully staged scene, executed with a predator's calm. The idea that a 15-year-old could orchestrate this level of disappearance, could manipulate older boys into following through, is what makes this moment so disturbing. The physical space was soaked in violence, but the psychological space was saturated in control. What kind of mind thinks through a cover-up before the crime is even discovered? And here's the most chilling piece. Later, one of the accused, Russell Jones, would lead police straight to Aaron Frier's body, buried in a tarp off a rural mountain road just hours after the initial discovery. Meaning, someone knew exactly where to go because they had planned exactly where to leave him. So we're left with the real question behind this first mystery. Was the crime scene ever meant to hide the murder, or was it a message in blood, left behind by a manipulator in disguise? We dig deeper into confessions, contradictions, and something Ellie said that would haunt the investigation from the start in the next part. Top 2. The cold walk into daylight. They weren't hiding. Just hours after Aaron Frier's brutal death, after blood was found smeared across his carpet, pooled in the trunk of his car, and trailed across the dirt outside the house, two teenagers were spotted casually walking down a busy street. In broad daylight, no disguise, no attempt to flee, and one of them was his daughter, 15-year-old Ellie Frier, and her 19-year-old boyfriend Gavin McFarland were seen strolling along a sidewalk in Medford, Oregon, only 4 hours after the 911 call. Not panicked, not injured, just walking, like any other teenage couple might after a weekend together. To seasoned investigators, this wasn't just odd, it was disturbing. Why return to town so soon, especially if you were involved in something so serious? Why expose yourself to public view if you knew a man had just been bludgeoned to death and his body left in the woods under a tarp? But more unsettling still was Ellie's demeanor. When officers approached, she didn't cry. She didn't ask if her dad was okay. In fact, she acted like she didn't even know he was missing. Her answers were vague. Her tone, eerily detached. When asked where she'd been, she said simply, "Out." And when they asked where her father might be, she smirked. Yes, smirked, and said, maybe he's out looking for me? For detectives, that moment sent up red flags. And for viewers who've followed this case online, it was a moment that burned itself into memory. One audience comment nailed the reaction perfectly. She sounded like a petulant toddler. Knowing full well her father was wrapped in a tarp, another said bluntly, "That wasn't confusion. That was taunting." So here's what we know from the evidence. At 5:30 a.m., a neighbor's security camera caught Aaron's car leaving the house. By 10 a.m., Ellie and Gavin were found on foot, without the car, without phones, without any believable explanation. Inside that car, police later found large amounts of blood soaked into the trunk carpet. And Aaron? Still missing. This makes us ask, were they calmly waiting to be caught? Were they trying to look normal, hoping it would buy them time? Or had they convinced themselves the worst was already over? Some theorize it was a failed escape. Others believe it was the boldest manipulation of all. By appearing unfazed, Ellie could claim she didn't know anything had happened, that she'd simply gone for a walk, that she'd stumbled into this moment like a clueless teenager. But that facade began to crack quickly. When separated at the station, Gavin and Ellie gave conflicting accounts. First, she said they met up by coincidence, then that they'd planned to leave together. But what really troubled investigators wasn't just the lies, it was how calmly she told them. The voice, the affect, the unnatural poise. It reminded some viewers of other infamous cases, Lori Vallow, Gypsy Rose, even the fictional character from Orphan. And then came the most chilling realization. Ellie and Gavin weren't alone. A third person had been with them that morning, Russell Jones, a friend of Gavin's. And when he was interviewed, he cracked. That's when the story of what really happened began to change. And it revealed a plan far more calculated than anyone wanted to believe. But for now, let's linger on that walk. The image of Ellie, just hours after her father's death, walking calmly down a public street beside the boy accused of helping kill him, no panic, no remorse, remains one of the most haunting scenes in this case. One that left even the most hardened investigators asking, what kind of teenager walks through town like nothing happened, when her father's body is still hidden in the woods? In the next part, we follow the trail to what police found in that trunk, and how it changed everything. If these two mysterious details, or anything else in this case, made you pause and think, let us know. A simple like not only supports the channel, but also helps share this story with more people, others who are also searching for answers. Do you have a theory? Did something seem off to you? Share your thoughts, or any other detail, in the comments below. Every insight is a piece of the puzzle, and who knows, maybe you will be the one who helps bring us one step closer to the truth. Thank you so much for your support. Now, let's move on to the next mystery. Top 3. The disappearing motive: love, abuse, or lies? It's one of the most disturbing paradoxes in this case, the motive that disappears the closer we look. From the outside, it seemed simple. A teenage girl trapped in a household of alleged abuse, a forbidden relationship, a desperate act to escape a father she claimed was hurting her. But then, the cracks began to show. Let's go back to the core of Ellie Frier's defense. The motive her legal team anchored to, that Aaron Frier, her father, was not just strict but abusive. Emotionally, physically, even sexually. Those words carry unimaginable weight. They halt time. They demand outrage. They change everything. But here's the problem. There was no documented history of abuse, no police reports, no medical records, no school alerts, not even a whisper, until after Aaron was dead. According to detectives, Ellie never confided in her school counselor, never told her mother, never warned her sisters. And the one time she did speak, the only time, the accusation came just 2 days before her father was bludgeoned to death. To make matters stranger, her younger sisters, especially Sierra, vehemently denied any abuse ever happened. In fact, they recalled Ellie being disciplined for sneaking around with her boyfriend, not punished unfairly. Sierra, who lived in that same house, described their dad as a good man. Loving, not perfect, but present. So we're left asking, was this real trauma or a fabricated justification? Even the police struggled. They said they had no evidence whatsoever to support the abuse claims. None. And yet, Ellie's words linger. She described acts that, if true, would be horrifying: groping, verbal degradation, moments that no child should endure. But if false, those words weren't just damaging, they were weaponized. Did she invent these stories to manipulate Gavin into action? Or did Gavin exaggerate them later to justify the horror of what he did? We don't know. But we do know this. Ellie told Gavin she was pregnant. She told detectives she was escaping a monster. She handed her boyfriend a bat and said, I'm ready when you are. And yet, she never ran. She chose to visit her father's house that weekend. She chose to stay when she could have remained safely at her mother's. She even lied during the interrogation, denied everything, until the evidence made silence impossible. So, what exactly was the truth here? This makes us wonder, was Ellie a scared teenager finally speaking out about years of abuse? Or was she a master manipulator using the most unforgivable claims to cover up an even more unforgivable act? And what about her silence during the interrogation? For hours, she cried, colored with crayons, changed her story, while a father lay dead and discarded. If the abuse was real, why wasn't she screaming it from the rooftops? If it wasn't, why go that far? And perhaps the most haunting question of all, was this whole motive carefully crafted, not to escape danger, but to excuse murder? The audience has wrestled with this too. Comments are divided. Some say, believe survivors. Others argue, she lied to save herself. There is no hard proof, just stories, just damage, just a father who cannot speak for himself. So we're left with an uncomfortable truth. Ellie's motive may never be proven, and that's exactly what makes it so dangerous. Because if the motive isn't real, then what is? And if it is real, why does it vanish under scrutiny? That question haunts this case. And in the next part, we'll examine something even more unsettling: the discovery of the crime scene and the blood trail that led nowhere. Top 4. The vanished motive. Let's be honest, every crime has a motive, or at least it should, but in this case, the deeper you look, the more that motive seems to vanish into smoke. Because if Ellie Frier's goal was to escape abuse, why didn't she simply leave? She lived with her mother. She had a safe home to return to. No one was forcing her to stay in that house. And yet, she went back, voluntarily. Not once, not twice, but regularly. This raises the fourth, and perhaps most chilling mystery in this case. Why did Ellie Frier keep returning to the home of the man she would later say she feared the most? She told police that her father, Aaron Frier, was abusive, physically, emotionally, and sexually. She said she lived in terror, that she endured unspeakable things, that she needed to be rescued. But here's the contradiction. At the time of the murder, Ellie wasn't being held hostage. She wasn't living full-time with Aaron. She had the option to stay with her mother, who shared custody. In fact, she was supposed to be with her mother the weekend it happened. Instead, she chose to visit her father. She brought a packed bag. She went willingly. She even told her sister she was excited to see him. Then, hours later, he was dead. And we're left asking, why? If everything she claimed about the abuse was true, what compelled her to keep going back? Was it manipulation, trauma bonding, or was the abuse fabricated to justify what came next? That question haunts this case, and it's one the audience can't stop asking. Because the motive isn't just murky, it's actively contradictory. We're told this was a desperate girl trying to escape a monster, but the timeline doesn't match the fear, and Ellie's behavior? It doesn't line up either. Her own sister said it. Ellie never seemed afraid. She never warned anyone. She never stayed away. In fact, she'd sneak around to be with Gavin. She defied both parents to keep the relationship going, and when questioned after the murder, she didn't seem broken. She didn't even seem shocked. Some viewers say she smirked, others said she sounded rehearsed, but almost everyone agrees. Something felt off. Her calm demeanor, her vague answers, her strange sense of detachment. It made people wonder, was this really about escaping abuse? Or was it about eliminating an obstacle? Because if you strip away the claims of victimhood, another picture starts to form. A picture of a teenager who wanted to be with her older boyfriend without restriction. A girl who resented authority. A girl who may have realized the only way to get what she wanted was to get rid of the person standing in the way. And that leads us to the most disturbing question yet. What if the abuse wasn't real at all, but a carefully crafted story told after the fact to reshape the narrative and reduce the consequences? It's a question that's echoed across thousands of viewer comments. It's what makes this case so divisive and so terrifying, because if that's true, If Ellie Frier fabricated abuse to justify a murder she helped plan, then this wasn't a cry for help. It was a lie told in cold blood. What do you think about these 5 mysterious elements? Which one lingers in your mind the most? Share your thoughts or theories in the comments below before we dive into the collective analysis and explore the major theories behind these mysteries. And if you believe this video deserves to be seen, leave a like and hit subscribe to Cold Radio. That's how you help bring these cold cases one step closer to the light of truth. Top 5. The 5th mysterious, strange thing. She said she didn't know where he was. She said it with a shrug, a smirk, a sideways glance like it was all some awkward misunderstanding. But Ellie Frier's reaction during her police interrogation wasn't just cold, it was chilling. The 5th strange and deeply unsettling mystery in this case is this: how could a 15-year-old girl sit across from detectives just hours after her father was found bludgeoned to death and perform emotion? Not feel it? Let's walk into that room. The walls are blank. The chairs are cheap. Ellie Frier sits there with crayons in front of her, a paper placemat for coloring. It looks more like a waiting room at a pediatrician's office than a murder investigation. But the air? It's thick, because while Ellie draws, her father's body lies in the woods, wrapped in a tarp. And the girl with the pigtail braid and the soft-spoken voice, she's not crying, she's not begging, she's not even asking what happened to him. Instead, Ellie plays a role. Her voice, baby-soft, hesitant, oddly rhythmic, almost like a child trying to remember her lines in a school play. She tells detectives she doesn't know what happened, that she just went out for a walk, that maybe her dad left to find her, and then she colors, while her mother fumes about the police, while her little sister struggles to process what she heard that night, while her boyfriend and his friend sit in other rooms, caught in contradictions. Ellie draws, and her silence roars. From an investigative standpoint, this kind of behavior throws up major red flags. It's not just the lack of emotion, it's the calculated stillness, the way she avoids questions, the way she redirects, the way she offers just enough to feign confusion, but never enough to implicate herself. One moment, she sniffles. The next, she stares blankly at the wall. Then she leans back, twirls a strand of hair, and says nothing at all. To detectives trained to detect guilt, this wasn't a grieving daughter, it was a performance. And viewers felt it too. Comment after comment poured in. She sounds like a toddler trying to fake cry. That wasn't confusion, that was taunting. You could see her adjusting her tone, changing tactics like she knew exactly what worked on men. This makes us wonder. Was Ellie mimicking what she thought innocence looked like? Was she using the crayon, the baby voice, the quivering lip as props? Or was this genuine shock from a teenager in over her head? Because here's what complicates everything. Psychologists will tell you that trauma doesn't always present the way we expect. That some children, especially those with abuse histories, dissociate. They go blank, they go inward, they play, they pretend. But in Ellie's case, there's a pattern. She lies about where she was. She lies about how long she was gone. She lies about whether she knew Gavin and Russell were with her. And each lie is wrapped in the same strange affect, like a girl trying on personalities to see which one will fit best. The most disturbing part, when confronted with the evidence, with blood in the trunk, with text messages, with Gavin's confession, Ellie doesn't break down. She just shifts again. She colors, she asks for water, she changes her story. And in that room, investigators began to realize this wasn't a girl with no story. This was a girl with too many. So the 5th mystery is not about what Ellie said, it's about how she said it. How does a teenager speak about her father's death like she's reciting a bedtime excuse? How does she sit inches away from officers discussing a homicide and ask for a different color crayon? And perhaps most disturbing of all, was this interrogation a window into Ellie's trauma, or a spotlight on her manipulation? That's what shook the audience the most. That a child could cry on cue. That she could sound innocent, look scared, and still hold back the truth. That she might be learning, even in that moment, how to weaponize her own voice. And it leaves us with a question we may never fully answer. Did Ellie Frier cry because she was broken? or because it bought her time? What do you think about these 5 mysterious elements? Which one lingers in your mind the most? Share your thoughts or theories in the comments below before we dive into the collective analysis and explore the major theories behind these mysteries. And if you believe this video deserves to be seen, leave a like and hit subscribe to Cold Radio. That's how you help bring these cold cases one step closer to the light of truth. We've now unraveled 5 of the strangest, most haunting threads in this case. A girl who appeared calm and eerily detached in the wake of her father's murder. A crime scene with a body missing but a plan disturbingly intact. An elaborate cover-up that may have been scripted days, if not weeks, in advance. A motive that vanished the moment it was questioned. And finally, a voice. So carefully performed, it left many viewers chilled to the bone. Individually, each of these elements raises eyebrows. Together, they paint a much darker picture. Not a moment of chaos, but a sequence. A plan. A narrative carefully constructed, then blurred at the edges to leave just enough confusion for reasonable doubt to survive. But when we put these pieces side by side, a pattern begins to emerge. A pattern where manipulation, performance, and control appear not just as side effects, but as possible motives themselves. Let's start with the contradictions. Ellie claimed to be the victim of unspeakable abuse, and yet she voluntarily returned to her father's home. She said she was afraid, but gave Gavin McFarland the signal. She said she didn't know where her father was while walking down the street with his alleged killer. She cried in the interview room, but it wasn't grief that came through, it was something else, something colder, controlled. Now, some say trauma can make people behave in ways we don't expect, that fear clouds logic, that abuse, especially from a parent, can cause someone to run toward danger, not away from it. And that's not untrue, but that explanation only holds if there's concrete evidence to support it. And here, there wasn't. No past reports, no confiding in school counselors, no text messages to friends about the abuse. Nothing, until after her father's death. Which leads us into the theories. Theory 1, the abuse was real, and this was a desperate escape. This theory suggests that Ellie, cornered and broken, saw no other way out. She confided in Gavin, he snapped, Russell helped, and together they did the unthinkable. It's a theory that's emotionally compelling, and one that her defenders still stand by. But it struggles under the weight of the facts. If this was a desperate escape, why the extensive planning? Why the pre-written notes? Why the lies during questioning? Theory 2. Gavin was the mastermind, and Ellie was manipulated. In this version, Gavin, older, controlling, and possibly obsessive, convinced Ellie to fear her father, fabricated a rescue narrative, and pulled Russell into a web of violence. Ellie, young and in love, followed his lead. But again, this falls short when you read Ellie's own messages. She wasn't just a passive passenger. She asked if Gavin could kill her father in under a minute. She handed him the bat. She said, "I'm ready when you are." Theory 3. Ellie planned it all. And this is the one that shakes people most. That Ellie, 15, soft-spoken and calculated, used the people around her like pieces on a board. That she created a false narrative of abuse. That she manipulated Gavin through romance, Russell through sympathy, and even the detectives through the performance of a wounded child. That this wasn't a girl trying to escape, but a girl eliminating a barrier. And, disturbingly, that theory fits too many of the facts. It explains her calm, her contradictions, her control over the timing, the plans, the silence, the choice of a weapon so personal and brutal, and yet so quiet. It fits the eerie tone she used when speaking to police. It fits the absence of emotion, even hours after her father's disappearance. And that's what unsettles so many of us. Because if it's true, if this was manipulation, not survival, then what do we make of her remorseful courtroom statement? Her academic achievements in prison? Her degree in psychology? Is it growth, or is it strategy? And perhaps the most haunting piece of all, if she could do this at 15, what might she be capable of at 30? Of course, we don't know the full truth. Maybe we never will. But that's the core of this case's enduring power. It refuses to resolve. For every theory that fits, another piece remains out of place. For every answer, two more questions rise. Was the abuse fabricated, or was it simply hidden too well? Was Ellie a victim of influence, or the architect of it? And above all, did justice truly match the crime, or did something darker slip through the cracks? This is where we turn to you, the Cold Radio community. You followed every twist, felt every contradiction, and questioned every tear. Now, we want to hear from you. What theory makes the most sense to you? What detail did you catch that others might have missed? Do you think the punishment fit the truth or the performance? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Let's keep the investigation alive together. Because in this case, closure isn't just elusive, it may be an illusion. There are some crimes that don't just end with a verdict, they echo, through the lives of those left behind, through the silences that follow, through the faces of the people who have to wake up and carry forward when the world has cracked open beneath them. The murder of Aaron Frier didn't just end a life. It fractured a family, left a mother bewildered, a daughter incarcerated, and another, Sierra, struggling to make sense of the unimaginable. At just 11 years old, she was pulled into a night of horror she never chose. And yet, she emerged with a quiet strength. She joined the National Guard. She stood up to defend the father she loved, and in doing so she reminded all of us that in the darkest places, light still fights to survive. But the scars? They remain. This case exposed something raw in the public conscience, not just about what happened, but about how we understand truth, manipulation, and accountability. It sparked debates about justice, about power dynamics between adults and minors, and about the weaponization of victimhood. And for many watching, one question kept rising to the surface. Can you ever really know what someone is capable of? Aaron Frier was a father, a drummer, and a man who, by most accounts, adored his daughters. His life wasn't perfect, none of us are, but what cannot be denied is this. He died alone in the woods, wrapped in a tarp, beaten to death by someone he once tucked in at night. Whatever version of events you believe, that truth remains, unrelenting and brutal. Let us not reduce Aaron to the claims made about him after he was gone. Let us remember him as Sierra does, a man who filled his children's lives with music and laughter, who once tried to teach his daughter how to play the drums, even if she wasn't very good at it. A father who showed up, who mattered, who deserved more than the silence that followed his last breath. And what of Ellie? Some see her as a frightened child, others a calculating manipulator. But perhaps the most chilling truth is this. She was both. And that duality of victim and villain, innocence and intent, is what makes this case so deeply unsettling. A 15-year-old orchestrating a murder is terrifying, but so is the idea that no one saw it coming. Even with convictions in place and sentences served, questions still fester at the edges. Did justice match the reality? Was this a reaction to abuse, or the cold execution of a plan? And most haunting of all, what happens when the mastermind doesn't look like one? This story has delivered no easy answers, but perhaps that's exactly why it needed to be told. Because true crime isn't about closure. It's about understanding, about looking into the shadows and asking how they got there. It's about honoring the lives affected, not just by what happened, but by what it meant. And for you, our audience, it's about more than watching. It's about participating, about questioning, about refusing to let these stories fade into silence. You don't just listen, you investigate, you feel, and you help ensure that truth, however elusive, is still pursued. Because stories like this one remind us that beneath every headline is a human being, behind every theory, a shattered family, and within every mystery, a chance to understand something we've been too afraid to face. The echoes of the Ellie Frier case continue to resonate, a stark reminder of the darkness we're still trying to comprehend. And that is why we continue our journey. If this video offered you a new perspective or made you pause and reflect, please hit like to help Cold Radio share this story with more people. What are your thoughts on this case? What part left you questioning the most? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because every perspective, every theory, could be a vital piece of the truth we're all trying to uncover. And don't forget to hit subscribe so you won't miss any of the cases we'll be opening next. Thank you for joining us, listening, and lending your voice to Cold Radio's pursuit of the truth.